I was ignored by my daughter at her graduation. "You don't deserve to be here," she said. Now she's called me 72 times, but it's too late. The restaurant was one of those places where you don't dare pronounce the wine list unless you've taken a class, and the lighting was dark enough to make everyone appear to have their life in order. I wore the only suit I had, a charcoal grey relic from my sister's wedding that I said I'd never wear again since it reminded me too much of that day. The tie was tight, the collar stiff, and my smile was as false as the leather boots. Nonetheless, I attended because my daughter was graduating, and that was important to me, regardless of what others thought. Emma sat across from me, glowing in a sleeveless blue dress that said, "I made it without trying too hard." Her boyfriend, or fiancé apparently, sat beside her, one of those startup kids with slicked back hair and a laugh that usually lasted just a few seconds longer than it should. Laura, my ex-wife, sat at the far end, clutching her wine like it was a prop, in a scene she'd been rehearsing all her life. She didn't look at me once, which was just fine. I was used to remaining invisible. There were two of Emma's buddies, one from college and the other from high school, both overdressed and overly courteous. One person kept remarking how incredible it was that we were all here together, as if this was some kind of family reunion, rather than a forced performance patched together for Instagram stories. The waiter then brought out the champagne and carefully poured it glass by glass while someone tapped a knife on a glass, the universal signal that something was about to be uttered. Emma stood. She handled her glass with grandeur. Her voice was soft and practiced. I knew the tone. Laura's voice was in Emma's mouth, with its passive, piercing elegance. "I just want to say," Emma said slowly, "how grateful I am to everyone who supported me through these last 4 years. It's been a long road, and I honestly couldn't have done it without the love of my mom, the encouragement of Brian," she gently grabbed his arm, "and the friends who stuck by me when things got hard." She paused. People smiled, nodded, and gave mild approbation. My hands were folded on my lap. I was waiting. I felt a sensation in my chest, like someone turning a doorknob that hadn't been touched in years. "And now that we're all here," she stared squarely at me, her eyes frigid, colder than the pricey crab salad I hadn't finished. "I want to acknowledge someone else. My father." Laura's head turned, as did others. A few faint giggles, the kind that break the silence when something feels odd. Emma smiled, but it was not warm. It was glassy. "Dad, you showed up tonight, so that's something." I did not move. I did not blink. She continued, and her voice became clearer and sharper. "But let's be honest. You didn't raise me. You didn't help me. You didn't show up to my birthdays. You didn't pick me up from practice. You weren't there for me when it mattered. You don't get to claim credit just because you bought a meal. You don't deserve to be here." The table froze. Even the ambient music and the clink of glasses on surrounding tables seemed to fade under the weight of that sentence. Laura didn't stop her, didn't interrupt, and didn't even appear ashamed. That stillness, God, that silence, was the most obvious betrayal of all. I glanced at Emma and saw the baby I used to rock to sleep, the toddler who used to run to me on the playground, and the little girl who once referred to me as her hero. That girl vanished, replaced by a polished woman with my ex-wife's voice and a stranger's eyes. I clapped once, twice, and 3 times. Slow, deliberate clapping. The type you get after a magic act you figured out halfway through. The table wasn't sure what to do. Emma's smile wavered. Laura's mouth moved, but she did not speak. No one else said anything. Then I grabbed my napkin, wiped my lips, and said, "Well, I guess I'll get the check." I departed before the dessert menu arrived. The walk to the parking lot was peaceful. I did not bang the door. I did not punch the steering wheel. I did not cry. I just drove. 30 minutes of highway and empty silence, until I arrived at my driveway, still wearing that stupid outfit. Inside, I sat at my computer and signed into the tuition account, which Laura never acknowledged and Emma never inquired about. It was in my name, with years of savings poured into it, tuition, rent, books, living expenses. Every penny she assumed came from scholarships and Mum's hard work. Every debt she felt she didn't need. I was the reason. I gazed at the balance, then quietly moved every last dollar to a second account. Mine. I didn't think twice. Then I composed a short message, printed it, folded it in half, and placed it in an envelope. I addressed it to Emma. No lengthy letter, no dramatic monologue, just 2 words. Earn it. This morning, I awoke to 72 missed calls. Emma, Laura, unknown numbers, no voicemails, just the frantic ping of a phone attempting to scream. I didn't respond. I prepared coffee, ate my breakfast slowly, and watched a squirrel on the fence drop a peanut it couldn't carry. It was unusually tranquil. She had not texted yet. Perhaps she expected me to cave. Maybe she expected me to feel guilty. I did not feel guilty. I felt seen. And for the first time in 22 years, I felt like I was actually doing something right. People always talk about presence as if it's an easy concept, as if simply showing up is enough to demonstrate your concern. But no one tells you what it's like to be present in the shadows, to love from the edges, and to spend years trying to matter to someone who is constantly told that you don't. I used to believe that if I remained constant, quiet, helpful, and dependable, she would figure it out eventually. But now I understand that silence does not build bridges. It simply allows the opposing side to burn them without intervention. Emma was 4 when Laura and I divorced. I recall how she clutched my trouser leg the day I packed my belongings and walked out of the house we'd spent almost a decade attempting to make into a home. Laura stood at the doorway, arms folded and stone-faced, as if she couldn't wait for me to leave so she could begin rewriting the story. "You can still be around," she added, and she meant it in the same way that a landlord would say, "You can stay until the lease runs out and then raise the rent behind your back." It began with minor changes, rescheduled visits, unanswered phone calls, and overbooked holidays. I tried to be understanding. I swallowed it like medicine, thinking it was best not to upset the balance. I told myself that simply showing up was sufficient, even if I had to wait in the car while she prepared, even if I received the off-brand version of parenting, in which everything had already been chosen before I entered the room. I worked 2 jobs for the majority of Emma's childhood, warehouse shifts during the week and bartending on weekends. I missed out on a lot, not because I didn't want to be there, but because someone had to pay for the roof over both my and her heads. I paid child support on time, never missed a payment, and never disputed the number Laura gave me, even when things got tight. I remember one month having $38 left after bills. $38. I bought a loaf of bread, some eggs, and a bag of apples, telling myself it was enough. When Emma reached 10, Laura enrolled her in a private school. Obviously, I was not consulted. I was handed a new tuition invoice and an ultimatum: if you care about her future, you'll find a way. So I did. I cancelled my health insurance, took on extra shifts, and said no to everything that wasn't her. Every month, I wired money straight to the school. No questions, no thanks expected. And when Emma mentioned how much her mother sacrificed to get her into that school, I just nodded. What else was I expected to do? Pull her aside and tell her, "Actually, sweetheart, your mum was just the mouthpiece. While I was the checkbook, she went to Yale. I paid for each semester, all 10 of them." The irony is that she always said she received full-ride scholarships, that she earned them via merit, and that Laura handled the rest. But no one gets through 10 semesters without help, and that help came from me. Every semester, I received an invoice in my mailbox and paid it within 72 hours. I saved the confirmation emails. I'm not sure why. Perhaps I planned to reveal them to her someday. Maybe I assumed she would want to know. I was never even invited to her high school graduation. Laura explained that they only had 2 tickets. She took her sister. I learned about the ceremony from Emma's Facebook post, which featured a photo of her in the blue gown with honor cords. I drove there nevertheless, parked behind the school, and stood in the back row of bleachers, just close enough to see her face. She never realized I was there. I sent her a present anonymously, a silver bracelet engraved with her initials. She thanked her mother for it in a Facebook comment thread. I never corrected her. You want to discuss presents? Let's talk about the time Emma fractured her wrist in 8th grade, and Laura didn't contact me until 3 days afterward. Or when Emma needed a new laptop for school, and I maxed out my credit card to get her the one she wanted, only to see her write online about how her mother came through yet again. Or the time she was hospitalized for stress in her sophomore year, which I learned about from a friend of a friend, because Laura didn't want me to be troubled. I was there, always there, just not where others could see me. So when she stood there at that nice restaurant, surrounded by friends and glasses of wine that cost more than my monthly groceries, and told me I didn't help her, that I didn't raise her, and that I didn't deserve to be here, I didn't become angry. I didn't yell, cry, or slam my hand down like a soap opera parent. attempting to win a scene. I just heard the echo of all those years, all those missed birthdays, all those quiet sacrifices she was never aware of because someone made certain she never saw them. And I grinned, not out of joy, but out of something uglier, colder, because I recognized the truth. She wasn't mistaken, not in her eyes and not in the reality Laura presented her. I'd allowed myself to become invisible, and now I was being punished for succeeding. "You did nothing for me," she remarked. I replayed that statement over and over the next morning, sitting in silence with my coffee, allowing those words to hang in the air like smoke from a fire I didn't ignite. I did not return her calls. I didn't need to because, for once, I had the silence to myself. There's something horribly terrible about the way a falsehood, repeated deliberately and with conviction over years, can seep into a child's bones and become their reality, a compass, an armor against the same person who would have taken a bullet for them without hesitation. Laura did not launch an evidence-based slander campaign following her divorce. No, she was too intelligent for that. She poisoned the well, drop by drop, always with a smile and just enough credible denial to make you doubt your own darn memory. "Daddy works too much," she'd say when I missed a recital I hadn't been asked to. Or, if Daddy loved you enough, he'd take you to Disneyland like Emily's dad when I couldn't afford it. Emma, as a child, drank the poison like it was water. Laura had the ability, if you can call it that, to rewrite history before it happened. If Emma earned a C on a test, it was because I wasn't there to assist her study. If she sobbed at a birthday party, it was because I hadn't called that morning. If she didn't make varsity in 10th grade, it was because I didn't push her enough growing up. Everything wrong became my responsibility, and everything right became a testament to Laura's courage as a single mother, despite the fact that she wasn't truly single, but rather deliberately coupled. And Emma took every warped interpretation of events, tucked them into her heart like little truths, and used them to build the wall that would eventually shut me out completely. I recall Emma asking for a pony when she was 7, a goddamn pony, during one of my visitation weekends. We were sitting in the mall's food court, munching soft pretzels, when she looked up at me and said, "Why won't you buy me a pony like Mom said you promised?" I was speechless. I chuckled at first, thinking she was joking, but her expression, that dead serious, already hurt look, made my stomach turn. "Sweetheart," I continued, "ponies need land, barns, and food, but we live in a one-bedroom apartment." She stared down at her cinnamon sugar pretzel and whispered, "You just don't want me to be happy." And that was, I believe, the moment I understood I was losing her, not because of anything I did, but because someone else was constructing a picture of me that I couldn't match. A mythological deadbeat, untrustworthy and selfish. A man who couldn't show up and didn't care when he didn't. I became the scapegoat for every bump in the road, every minor childhood disappointment, since it was easier than recognizing that the world doesn't always give you what you want, especially when the adults around you are too busy settling scores rather than parenting children. Laura had the advantage of being present for every tear, tantrum, and spelling bee, and she used that position as a sculptor's hammer and chisel, sculpting Emma's image of me until there was nothing left but a shell of a guy who only existed to disappoint. And God help me, I let her, because every time I considered fighting back, bringing Laura to court, or requesting equal custody, I imagined Emma in the midst, wailing in a fluorescent-lit mediation room as 2 lawyers fought over her future. So I remained quiet. I continued writing checks. I kept showing up in the small ways I was permitted. I kept believing that if I was steady enough, if I was quiet, good, and giving, Emma would be able to see through the fog by herself. However, she didn't. Over time, I became a ghost with a checkbook. I was the dad who always paid but never showed up to the party, who sent Christmas gifts with no return address, and whose birthday calls went directly to voicemail. I was valuable, yet invisible. That's the thing about being invisible. People stop thinking about you as a person. They stop thinking you have sentiments, pride, or a breaking point. I was telling James about all of this one night, sitting in his garage with a couple of cheap beers, the air thick with the smell of old motor oil, and whatever regrets reside in a man's tool shed. He let me speak for a long time, did not interrupt, and simply nodded and grunted in the appropriate places. Then he leaned back in his broken lawn chair, took a long sip of his drink, and remarked, "You kept feeding a wolf, hoping it wouldn't bite. Guess what, buddy? It bit." James had a flair for telling the ugly truth in a single statement with no garnish. Later that night, I listened to Emma's message. She sounded different from the person who humiliated me over supper. Her voice was broken open, raw, and quite infantile in its desperation. "Please, Dad, we need to talk. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Just please call me." And for a little moment I almost did. But the echo of her comments at the table, "You don't deserve to be here," sounded louder than anything else. Because despite what she claims now, that moment was not a mistake. It was not a slip of the tongue. It was how she genuinely saw me, the monster her mother created. Perhaps she enjoyed it that way. The first voicemail arrived just before daybreak. Her voice was shaking, partly sleepy or perhaps just broken down in that raw, early morning manner when the world seems colder than it is. I didn't respond. I just sat at the kitchen table, my coffee lukewarm, listening to the message play over the phone speaker, as if it were someone else's kid speaking. "Dad, I don't know what's happening. My card isn't working, and I have rent due Friday. Can you please call me?" The panic in her voice was not like the rage she directed at me over that supper. That was a slap in the face disguised as a toast, intended for a large audience. This was genuine, unrefined terror that cannot be faked. The second voicemail arrived 30 minutes later. She was crying now with no pretense. "Dad, please, I think something's wrong with the account. I tried phoning Mum, but she has no idea what I'm talking about. Please, can you call me?" She hesitated, perhaps expecting me to respond mid-message, like she used to do, assuming that if she wished hard enough, things would solve themselves. But nothing came, just quiet. She hung up. By the fifth voicemail, she had stopped crying. Her voice had veered between begging and blaming, something Laura often did when things didn't go her way. "I don't know why you're doing this," Emma snapped into the receiver, "but it's not okay. I have responsibilities now. I have bills and an internship, and this is cruel, Dad. This is beneath you." As if she suddenly knew what was above or beneath me. As if she ever gave a damn before about what I carried on my back to give her the illusion of freedom. I sat through every message she left, each one becoming a bit more desperate, then angry, then quiet again. A full cycle unfolding in real time. By lunchtime, there had been 72 missed calls, as well as short texts like, "Call me," "What happened?" "Are you okay?" Then they got longer. "This isn't like you. I didn't mean what I said. Please don't do this to me." But I was not doing anything to her. I basically stopped doing everything for her. There is a distinction. One is an act of cruelty, while the other is a long overdue act of survival. Laura finally called at 2 p.m. when I believed Emma told her the whole story and understood Mom had no control over the consequences. Her voice was strong and furious, with that familiar tone she used when she believed she was right. "John, what the hell are you playing at?" she asked, not even saying hello. "Emma is in a crisis. Her internship is on the line. You know damn well that donation was tied to her placement. Her rent's unpaid. Her laptop needs replacing. What do you expect her to do now?" I did not say anything for a second, just listened to the clinking of her bangles on the phone, the impatience in her breathing, and the entitlement that had built up over years of making decisions she never paid for. And then I said as frankly as I've ever spoken anything in my life, "No, this time I'm just letting her see what that really feels like." She gasped, that dramatic, trained gasp I'd heard 100 times during our marriage when things didn't go her way. "You're abandoning her," she declared, her voice rising like a siren. "Not abandoning," I replied, just stepping out of the way. "You raised her to believe I was nothing. Maybe it's time she lives in that world for real." She branded me selfish, cold, and vindictive, and said I'd never forgive myself, but none of it hit home the way it did before. I used to fold like cheap furniture when she said things like that, certain I was the villain because I didn't want to argue. But not this time. This time, I kept the stillness long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then I hung up. James arrived later that night. He always had perfect timing, like a working-class guardian angel, with a cooler full of cheap beer and opinions, as hot as his lawnmower exhaust. We sat in the garage, like we did when I first came in. Same plastic chairs, same crappy radio station playing in the background. I told him everything from the dinner to the bank transfer, and he just listened, nodding as men do when they know there is no counsel to offer, only solidarity. "You sure this ain't going to haunt you?" he finally inquired, cracking open another beer and pushing it across the table toward me. I stared him dead in the eye and stated, "James, I've been haunted for at least 20 years, and the ghost knows my name. That night, I drove to the bank, not out of terror or regret, but out of clarity. I closed the entire education account. Whatever remained, I opened a new account in my name alone. For once, money wasn't for rent or school or for crises that I didn't know about until they were too late. That was for me. For the first time in over 2 decades, I felt something that didn't quite register as happy, but was close, perhaps tranquility, or simply not feeling like I owed everyone everything. I spent all of my time sitting in the parking lot afterward. The motor was turned off, the lights lowered, and my phone was constantly ringing near me. I did not touch it. She burned the bridge. I had just stopped swimming to the other side. It was nearly midnight when she finally arrived. Headlights flashed across the front of the home like a timid ghost returning to haunt the living. Her automobile was parked sideways in the driveway, as if she had been too scared to straighten it. I watched from the living room window, the lights off, the TV turned off, sitting in the same chair where I used to read her goodnight stories when her voice was gentle and her love simple. She didn't knock right away, instead sitting in the car with the engine turned off, most likely rehearsing whatever version of herself she felt may break through the wall between us. I waited, not out of pettiness or pride, but because I wanted her to truly embrace this moment without the distraction of a phone, a script, or her mother mumbling lines behind her back. When she eventually knocked, it was soft and timid, as if she wasn't sure I'd answer, or perhaps she thought I shouldn't. A part of me agreed, but I opened the door anyhow, and there she was. No makeup, curled lashes, or flawless posture, just raw and true in the way that only someone truly vulnerable can be. Her hair was twisted back in a jumble, as it always did when she was studying late or crying too hard to notice her reflection. Her eyes looked as if she hadn't slept since the dinner. Despite the chaos, she looked more like my kid than she had in years. We stood in the doorway for a long time, simply breathing. She did not try to hug me. I did not move aside to let her in. Finally, she asked, "Why did you do that?" Her voice was no longer furious. It was something heavier, something that wanted to comprehend rather than battle. "Why did you turn everything off?" I did not raise my voice. I did not move from the threshold. I stared her full in the eyes and replied, "You told me I didn't do anything, so I stopped doing something." I saw the words land, softly but sharply, like broken glass. Her shoulders dropped. It was the first crack. She didn't expect me to be so honest, especially after years of cutting my tongue bloody. "I didn't know," she murmured, her voice wavering like a radio station in between frequencies. "I promise I did not know, Dad. Mom said you didn't pay, you didn't care, and we were on our own." She looked up, eyes rimmed red, fingers curling into her sleeves like a child again. I believed her. Of course she did. Children always believe the parent who is still present, the one who prepares their breakfast and fills their minds with stories, while the other parent becomes a silhouette in a photo frame. "You believed her because I let you," I stated softly but steadily, not out of cruelty, but because I had finally discovered my spine and was not going to give it up. Every time I attempted to press for more, she forced you to pick, and with every shove, I lost a bit more of you. So I stopped pushing, hoping you'd come back on your own sometime. Tears flowed then. She quickly wiped them, as if they were shameful, as if I hadn't changed her diapers and comforted her through fevers and night terrors. But I still didn't take a step forward. I didn't comfort her because it wasn't the right time. This was the reckoning. "So why didn't you fight harder to be in my life?" she queried, almost shouting, as if the question had been lodged in her throat for years, and she had only now received permission to scream. "Why didn't you break down the door?" "Because I was tired of bleeding just to prove I loved you," I muttered, and it came out harsher than I intended, but it was the truth, and she needed to hear it without sugar. "Because I gave up every damn piece of myself, and you handed them all to someone else." She nodded slowly, as if she were swallowing a truth that would burn on the way down. "I didn't know," she said again, this time quieter, as if the words were shattering in her chest. I didn't say anything for a long time, but gazed at her, at the lady she'd grown into, at the girl who used to call me her best friend but now treats me as a sad obligation. "Do you want to rebuild something?" I asked finally. "Good, then rebuild, but this time, earn it like I did." She looked up, surprised, as if she expected forgiveness to be delivered like a coffee order. However, there was no free pass waiting. Not this time, not after 22 years of erasure. She took a hesitant, unsure step forward, as if approaching a wounded animal. When she reached for my hand, I jerked back, not aggressively or in rage, but just enough to make the message clear. Some bridges do not reconstruct themselves overnight, especially when they have been burned for so long that all that remains is ash and memories. Her eyes moistened again, but she did not argue. She did not plead. She stood still at the doorway, and I took a step backward. Then I went inside. The door did not bang. It closed softly. And for the first time in years, I felt something that no apology could ever provide, not peace, but strength. It tasted like both justice and pain.